I wanted to talk with you, just to transition into the next part of what we're doing here today, to share with you what is it about our work and why are we here. This particular moment in time is particularly special. So if you think about it, conferences like these involve people who've really stopped a lot of work going on. We're all very busy people. We've traveled very far distances to come here and sync your lives up for this brief moment. So it's actually a very special moment in that sense. And so what we want to do is to think about what it means to be here and to look at what you can contribute. All the talk that Miriam was giving around that this is a special country, and this country has an advantage because of the differences, and that we know how to work with difference, puts us in this unique moment, because we are the people who are influencing the future. I said in my talk last year on this stage that I believe the people in this room have the potential to change the arc of human history. And I still believe that. In fact, I believe that more now than I did the year before. Because these are the people that are building that new economic model, the new way we're going to lead our economy, our society forward to health, sustainability, to equal opportunity, to access for people that have ideas and want to turn them into something of value. This particular place, for instance, when we think about Kansas City, why the heartland, why the middle of the country, this was the trailhead of the American frontier. As Miriam was saying, we're all immigrants, we're all journeyers in this country. This city was actually the place where people gathered together to form teams that didn't exist before for very risky journeys into the unknown, which is the entrepreneurial process. And that's what makes this country so special and so unique. What I want to do is to share with you where we are in terms of where we are as a field in entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship today is essentially people like this. This is your tribe. I just met someone earlier who was saying, I feel like I found my lost tribe. And we've been able to build a significant body of practice in our work. But what we haven't done yet is to really congeal it together into a field of practice. And so if you're familiar with the idea of the chasm, so in coming out of Silicon Valley, the idea that all ideas have to take this leap. They have to go from ideas that are nascent, they get some people that are interested in working with crazy ideas, the innovators and the early adopters, and they turn them into something that's useful. And so what we have is a minimum feature set. We have some really interesting ideas on how we build ecosystems, and we've been experimenting with these different pieces, but we haven't pulled it all together yet into a full thing. So we're facing what, in the product development world, they call the chasm, which is that leap that you have to take in order for something to become mainstream. And so on the other side of that is what we call the early majority. So if you think about the coolest gadget, when the iPhone came out, people camped overnight. And those people that bought something sight unseen that just had a passion for it, those were the innovators and the early adopters. Which are the people in this room? We are the people that believe, and we have passion. We are now at the point where we have to take it to the next step. We have to up the game. We have to build the field of practice into a sustainable, professional field. And so that means we've got to cross that chasm into the mainstream. To do that, we've got to make it into a definable place where we know that we have methods and metrics, common language, common ways of doing things, and we have the ability to share as a profession, to learn from each other, and grow together. So that's where we are as a chasm, but together we can cross this chasm. These are some cute-looking sticks in this chasm, and we can build these sticks up to actually cross this chasm. So what I'd like to tell you about is where we are today as a movement. So we've taken this model of discover, design, and deliver. Last year, our summit was around discovery. So that's where we were learning about what's happening out there across the field and building entrepreneurial ecosystems. We were learning from one another, and we learned a lot. We spent our effort to go out there into the field. We spent the past year actually working and learning and having conversations with many, many of you to understand what was missing. And that process of discovery now has brought us back to year 2. And now we're ready for design, which is let's start to build the solutions to the issues that we're dealing with together. So how do we build the field of entrepreneurial ecosystem development as a whole body of practice? And so out of that work for the past year, we've developed a set of goals. And these are similar to what the United Nations did with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are these bodies of knowledge and development that we need to build out together that help us answer the different questions that all of us are dealing with in different ways across this work. If we have these 7 things, if we answer these 7 questions, we will have a field called ecosystem building. And what we'd like to work with you on is to enroll you in this process. So this is not about Kauffman coming to you with the answers. This is about Kauffman coming to you as a partner to co-create and to enroll you as a partner in helping us build and shape the future of what entrepreneurial development looks like. And so I'll walk through each of these goals briefly and ask you about them. But in each of these different goals, we're going to need your help because each of them is a different piece. These are like empty vessels. These are buckets that we need to fill with your knowledge, with your insights, with your experiences, with your networks, with the practice of the work that you've been doing out in the field. The first one is to have an inclusive field. This is basically who's invited to the dance, as one of the people in the video was talking about. So who's invited to the dance, and who's able to participate in this process of thinking, because what comes into the system is what affects what comes out of the system. So we need you involved in helping, making sure that all the voices that we bring into this process are inclusive, that we bring lots of people into this conversation, like we have here at this conference. Goal number 2 is a collaborative culture. And this goes to how do we do the work? How do we break down the silos across the field? One of the things we've discovered in the past year, as we've done discovery, is that there's actually, Andy says, 212 different tools we've discovered that people are currently using for building entrepreneurial ecosystems. It's just that everyone's got their little pockets. Everyone's working in their own little way. These little tools are stuck in little folders on their computer, or they're stuck in some drawer somewhere. So we need to strengthen that collaborative culture across our field so we are in a position to share things more effectively and build off of one another. 3 is a shared vision. That is, where are we going together? And some of you, probably all of you in this work, realize that we can't even agree on what's the definition of an entrepreneur, what's the definition of an ecosystem, what's the definition of capital, what's the definition of a startup. We need to figure this out, right? We need to, as a field, say, here's some common lexicon, here's some common vocabularies of how we describe the work, and let's align around how we're trying to get there together as one unit, as one field of practice. So that's one of the things we need your help with. Number 4, connected networks. How do we sync up? How do we lock networks across this field so we can share information effectively together? So those 212 different tools that are sitting in different people's desks and their pockets and their drawers, we can start to share more effectively. So then we can learn, and we can build what we have from a siloed community, a fragmented community, into one where people are able to access the ideas and the resources quickly to be able to do the work more effectively. Number 5, quantified methods. So we need to be able to know, how do we count the stuff? How do we know it's working? So how do we do what we do? And there's so many different ways of doing this, but if a mayor came to me and said, I've got this particular set of issues in my community, what's the best tool for me to use? We don't have an answer with a lot of precision. Well, we need to come up with those types of answers. We need to create that kind of scientific precision, and we need to build that knowledge base of how do we do this work well, and then how do we measure it and track what's happening. Because we can't get there by measuring how many companies are created, because that's a long-term outcome of the work we do. How do we know it's working on the way to that outcome? And those are tools that we need to build. So there's a lot of work to be done in this area as well. Goal number 6 is universal support. And this goes to the question of, how do we get everybody on the bus? How do we make sure that it's not just the people building ecosystems and the entrepreneurs and the people supporting entrepreneurs, but we have large corporations, we have large financial institutions, we have policymakers at all different levels of society. We have essentially all the people that are involved that touch the entrepreneurial process. I like to say that it's not just the 3 people out of every 1,000 that decide to start a business every month. The success of entrepreneurs depends in large part upon what the other 997 do to support the success of those 3. And that's what we need to do, is to find out ways to get the other 997 on board the bus. And then goal number 7, sustainable work. which is how do we keep it going? How do we become legit? And this is challenging for many of you because people that build entrepreneurial ecosystems come in many different flavors, shapes, and sizes. Some of you work as volunteers. Some of you work in scrappy little nonprofits. Others of you are in governments. Others are in universities. Others have their own companies. Others do this as a side thing because they're also entrepreneurs and they realize they need to engage the whole community. Everyone's coming at it from a different angle. But what's really hard is it's not really considered a legit thing to do. It's like the thing you do on the side that you want to do all the time, but you can't. So how do we turn this into a real profession? How do we turn this into something that you can say, that's my job, that's what I do, and I know how to make a living out of it? So that's a challenge that we all need to tackle together. And I know there are some really interesting revenue models and business ideas that people have used to monetize that and actually build sustainable livings out of it. But there's got to be more, and we've got to learn and share from each other as well. So now, those are the 7 goals. We need you as a partner to do this. So now what we're going to do, and this conference, as Andy said, is different than any other conference you've probably been at. This is a working conference. We work hands-on. We discover, we design, we deliver, we build, we solve problems. And we're going to actually not just talk about it, we're going to live it by making this whole conference into a living, real-time ecosystem. So the way we design this conference is very much to drive that kind of work that we want. And it's the same type of principles, the same kind of behaviors we want you to do in your communities, because that's how things get done. That's how problems get solved, by leveraging diverse voices, talents, and skills, bringing them together into conversation to fix problems and advance the agenda forward. So thank you very much for being here. Let's get to work, and I look forward to spending the next couple days with you to do some great work. Thank you, everybody.